Welcome, everyone. We often look at highly successful, deeply connected families and just assume they got lucky, right? But here is a truly fascinating truth I recently uncovered. Successful families absolutely do not happen by accident. They don't just spring up out of thin air. They actually require a very deliberate, intentional, and highly structured framework to truly thrive. So today, we're going to unpack a brilliant source that lays out exactly how to stop leaving your family's future to chance and instead start building it with real purpose in this explainer.
Okay, let's dive right into this. We've got a practical blueprint today built on 4 main pillars. First, education and career decisions. Second, the fundamental necessity of practical skills. Third, everyday etiquette and morals. And finally, number 4, controlling emotions and anger.
Let's start with pillar number 1, education and career, and why early decisions matter. The entire foundation of any family really starts with how we handle the next generation's schooling. But we kind of need to completely reframe how we look at it. So, I want to ask you a very direct question just to kind of disrupt your autopilot for a second. Why do you send your kids to school? If you ask most parents, they'll usually say, well, so they become good people, good citizens, good humans. But let's be honest here, that's a bit of a logical fallacy. You don't actually need to go to school to be a good human being. You send your kids to school so they can eventually secure a job, build a business, and become successful. It is fundamentally about intentionally building a specific career. Yet we see parents make this massive logical flaw all the time. They put a child in school, push them all the way through college, and basically let them wander until they're like 25 years old before figuring out what they actually want to do. Now, think about this. You don't let a child wait until they're 25 to choose their religion, their language, or their culture, right? You establish those on day 1. So why on earth would we leave their most critical life decision, their career, entirely up to chance? And this brilliantly illustrates the true power of early intentionality. Our source shares these 2 absolutely fascinating anecdotes. First, there's Dr. Javed. His parents literally started calling him doctor when he was just 5 years old. And even though he actually didn't get the grades for medical school initially, that label stayed completely locked in his subconscious. He eventually moved to America, and because everyone still called him doctor, he literally went back to university and earned a PhD just to justify the title. No way, right? Or take Usman Buzdar. His father and the local people called him CM because of his family's service to the poor. Years later, he actually became the chief minister. It's basically the law of attraction in action. When you set a child's conscious path early on, they will find the means to achieve it.
Moving on to our second pillar, the necessity of skills and practical knowledge. Formal education is fantastic, absolutely crucial, but it's just not enough on its own. Every single family member, regardless of how many academic degrees they hold, really must possess a practical, hands-on skill.
Now, if you're thinking manual skills might be beneath you, this surprising fact should completely dismantle that stigma. In Germany, learning a practical trade is practically mandatory for survival and success. Get this. Even Angela Merkel, the former chancellor of Germany, literally one of the most powerful leaders in the entire world, was trained as a barber. She actually knew how to cut hair professionally before she ever entered politics. Having a physical skill is your ultimate backup plan.
So every single member of your family should know how to do something with their hands. We're talking plumbing, understanding basic electrician work, or even shoemaking, which, by the way, is a trade practiced by the Prophet himself. Learn motor mechanics or even painting. There's this fantastic story from our source about an American ambassador in Islamabad. She visited a local school, saw the walls were completely filthy, and when the administration told her they were waiting for next year's budget to hire a painter, she didn't just nod and leave. The very next day, she showed up with her entire embassy staff, picked up a brush, and painted the school herself. A manual skill isn't an emotion, it's absolute empowerment.
But of course, applying physical skills requires intelligence and planning. Our source mentions watching 4 guys blindly trying to carry this incredibly heavy exercise treadmill through an office. They were smashing it against walls, completely ruining the door frames, and literally nearly crushing their own feet. Why? Because they didn't apply basic mechanics. Before you move something heavy, use a tape measure. Measure the machine, measure the doorways, and plan the route. Taking a couple of hours to plan completely prevents the sheer misery of a broken wall and a totally failed task. You have to apply your brain to physical labor. All right, let's look at the third pillar, etiquette and morals, or the mechanics of behavior. You can have all the degrees and skills in the world, but they are completely useless without the strict mechanics of good behavior to back them up. Now, what's really interesting about this is how true etiquette isn't about snobbery at all. It's actually about anticipating the comfort of others. For example, never force a handshake or a hug. You have no idea if the other person has a hand injury or if they just aren't comfortable with physical contact. Give them the option by simply saying hello first. Also, nobody likes a wet handshake. Always completely dry your hands after washing them. When you visit someone, bring a small gift, even if it's literally just a single flower. And when your guests leave, walk them all the way out to their car and wait until they drive off. These might seem like small social mechanics, but they completely elevate a family's reputation.
And then we have the physical rules of dining, which are surprisingly ignored these days. Never slurp tea loudly from your throat. You should sip it quietly with your lips. Remember the old phrase, "There's many a slip between cup and lip"? It perfectly enforces proper drinking habits. Avoid aggressively clinking your cutlery against your plate. Never blow your nose or cough openly at the dining table. And understand that barking loudly is considered highly offensive in almost every single culture globally. These aren't just polite suggestions, folks. They are the absolute baseline of family dignity. Beyond basic etiquette, we have pure morals. This is the definitive line that separates truly decent humans from the rest. Good morals mean telling the truth, keeping your promises, being strictly punctual, and having a firm rule that anyone who comes to your door, even a beggar, is offered food or tea. Contrast this with bad morals, lying, breaking promises, and chronic negative thinking. Grounding your family in strong integrity is just non-negotiable for long-term development. Which brings us to our final and honestly most critical pillar, controlling emotions and regulating anger. All the education and skills in the world cannot save a family if they completely ignore the biological realities of emotional regulation.
So the crucial point here is this: external failures, like a lack of money or career tension, do not destroy families. Uncontrolled internal emotions do. And the absolute most destructive emotion of all? Unbridled anger.
There is a striking biological fact from the source that I found completely fascinating. When you get furious, the actual chemical reaction of anger in your human body only lasts exactly 12 minutes. That is it. Your body physically processes and flushes out those intense enzymes within 12 minutes. And even in cases of the most extreme, blinding fury, the absolute maximum duration those chemicals can remain in your system before normalizing is 38 minutes. If you can just manage to outlast that strictly biological timer, your logical brain will absolutely come back online. So what is the highly actionable step-by-step biological antidote when you feel that 12-minute spike? Well, first, put a mental block up and just wait. Force a delay in your reaction. Second, drink 2 large bottles of water. Water actually physically absorbs the heat of the emotion and forces you to pause while you're drinking. And third, if you're still feeling that rage, step away and take a shower. Water has incredible power to physically cool down your nervous system. Seriously, do not let a temporary 12-minute chemical spike destroy a 20-year family bond.
Furthermore, you have to actively reduce your expectations of others. Expectation is basically the root cause of all emotional distress. When you expect too much from people, you are setting yourself up for disappointment and anger. Consciously lowering those expectations acts as an incredible emotional shield against future family crises. So, here's the ultimate question I want to leave you with today. Will you continue to let your family run on chance and autopilot, just kind of crossing your fingers and hoping for the best? Or will you take immediate action on this structured knowledge and start building your family's future using this 4-pillar blueprint today? The choice is entirely in your hands, and honestly, the work starts right now. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, and I absolutely cannot wait to see you apply these incredible concepts.